Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture with me, Frank Rausam Pereira. Since you're here, let me ask you, have you liked the video and subscribed to Bharata First? If no, then please do so now. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive information. And how can I not tell you about the Bharata First Knowledge Center? It is your one-stop destination for all your competitive exams needs. We now have 26 amazing courses all put together to help you in your competitive exams and also make you better Bharatiyas. Live classes for the second phase are in progress. Do ensure that you register now and participate in the interactive sessions. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details. Many candidates who cleared UPSC CSE this year have thanked Bharata First and the Knowledge Center for playing a big part in their success. So don't be left behind and don't regret later. Register now. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. And now on to the discussion. There seems to be a clear trend emerging of non-BJP ruled states taking on either the center directly or the constitutional appointee of the center in the state. We witnessed the bitter war of words between Chief Minister of West Bengal and the governor of the state over the last few months. Elsewhere in Tamil Nadu, the state government and the governor have been at loggerheads over the NEET Bill. And the most recent controversy has been in the state of Telangana, where the Chief Minister didn't follow protocol, citing illness during the Prime Minister's non-political visit to the state's capital, Hyderabad. In the past too, we've witnessed such incidents in opposition-ruled states like Punjab and even Delhi. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze the burning issue of center versus states and what does it mean for cooperative federalism. Joining me on the program today are Subramanian Lakshminarayanan, former Chief Secretary, Madhya Pradesh, and former Home Secretary, Government of India. Also with me on the program, J. Sai Deepak, Advocate of the Supreme Court, and Tushar Gupta of Swarajya. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of a Big Picture. So, Mr. Lakshminarayanan, let me start the program with you first. You know, several issues going on between the center and the states. You have Mamata Banerjee and the center, or the governor in West Bengal. You have, a similar kind of a situation going on with the governor and the elected government in Tamil Nadu with regards to the NEET Bill. And now there is the entire issue with the Chief Minister of Telangana and the Honorable Prime Minister of the country in Telangana. So how would you look at this whole issue?
So, as per the framers of the constitution, the governor is supposed to be the eyes and ears of the central government. So even though we have a federation of states with the unitary bias, they are the eyes and ears of the government. Now, this kind of a conflict is all the more now visible, primarily because we have a very strong Prime Minister in Mr. Modi, and by virtue of his own policies and the way of his style of functioning, either he has Modi bucks or Modi haters. And unfortunately, all the state governments, wherever the BJP is not in power, they are having some grudge or the other with the government of India. Having a grudge is fine, but then not receiving the Prime Minister and trying to insult the Prime Minister and the governor is totally unethical, not called for, and not expected from the stature of honorable chief ministers. Mistakes on the part of constitutional authorities like the governors, that one, they should not be going to the press and all, as it happens in the case of West Bengal, deriding the chief minister. And of course, the chief minister is also not sparing him. She is deriding him all the more. This is a very unhealthy practice. And the governor should have set an example by maybe through correspondence, by also sending reports to the government of India. He can certainly differ with the chief minister and then call the chief minister and tell her that why he doesn't agree. But then going to the press is not called for. And this has become so acrimonious in West Bengal that it has become almost like a tamasha. That the governor is trying to greet the chief minister, and the chief minister is with a very swollen face, is not even responding to him, and this is being shown in the television. All this is speaking very poorly of our country, and the standard of ethics among the topmost people.
Absolutely.
But all the same, I think in the interest of keeping all the states together, there is no harm in the Prime Minister calling all these chief ministers and saying that, look here, the institution is more important than the individual, and they need to show the basic decorum which is called for. I don't think in America, even though that is again a federation of federation of states, nobody will insult the president. They may differ with the president in many ways, but they will not openly insult the president the way it is happening here. It happened recently in Punjab. It has now happened today with KCR, and all these kind of pretexts that I'm feeling unwell and this and that, and saying that I'm busy, and then not even sending some junior minister. He speaks very poorly of the way the chief ministers are conducting themselves. Yes, at the same time, as the head of the country, in a way, the democratically elected head of the country, the Prime Minister also needs to take them into confidence. Yes, to differ in a democracy is part of our constitution. They can differ.
Right.
But then this should not be a matter of public spat as it is happening now.
Points taken. J.Sai Deepak, let me bring you to the picture now. So what is the constitutionality of this entire issue? Because on the one hand, there are certain experts that suggest and say that it is the elected will of the people that is being, that is being questioned, with the governor trying to step in and trying to push his or her muscle.
See, if it is a question of the elected, let's say the will of the people, at a time when we are seeing rampant interference by the Supreme Court itself with respect to the will of the people, I'm sure the governor can certainly look at some of these issues specifically because he is constitutionally mandated to do so. A return of the bill on reasons, for specific reasons that he believes, which he has spelled out in his press release, which is to say that this is against a specific judgment of the Supreme Court, wherein the validity of NEET has been upheld and its reasons have been accepted, which is to say that this is in the interest of the poorer sections of the society. He is entitled to return it to the assembly, asking it to reconsider it. So I think he is well within his powers to do so. Now, apart from the constitutionality of the issue, this much is clear that of the last at least 1.5 to 2 years, NEET has become a part of a political game, largely on the part of the state government in Tamil Nadu, which is trying to create the impression that somehow the central government and NEET itself are entirely against the interests of the students of Tamil Nadu alone, as if the central government of this country has an axe to grind with the poor students of Tamil Nadu. That is more or less the narrative that's being peddled. And I'm sorry to say, this is downright irresponsible because you're playing with the lives of students. And most importantly, you're actually making it impossible for these children to equip themselves to compete at an all India level. The very purpose of having an all India competitive examination at the highest level for these professional degrees is to ensure that there is a certain degree of quality as well as normalization in terms of skill sets, which they're able to prove and showcase as part of this examination. And when you try and create an exemption to in favor of one particular, let's say, state, citing reasons which I don't think are tenable, then what is the value of having any of these entrance examinations? Tomorrow we are bound to say that even the IIT-JEE examination must be exempt for students from Tamil Nadu because apparently students of Tamil Nadu cannot crack these examinations. Then you go a step further and then you say the UPSC is not to be applied to these people. Then where do we stop? So strictly speaking, constitutionally, I think Governor R.N. Ravi was well within his rights to return. It's for the assembly to reconsider. And then once it sends back the same bill in the very same format, then of course the law has to take its own course and then the governor has to do what the constitution mandates. But he has expressed his disagreement and it is for the assembly to take that into account. The one point that I would like to add in addition to what the previous panelist mentioned is that the Indian structure is far more union-centric than in the United States. And there's a good reason for this. We are a union of states for the simple reason that in light of the history of the partition and the subsequent efforts taken to integrate this country, there is a greater degree of hold that the constitution mandates and envisages as far as the center is concerned over the states. Therefore, other than the specific issues which have been culled out in favor of the states under the state list, It is largely the domain of the center. Therefore, in fact, in my view, the concept of federalism, as far as Bharat is concerned, if it has to be compared with a balance, the scales tip typically in favor of the center, which is why you have doctrines such as the doctrine of colorable legislation, wherein the position that is taken by center with respect to a law cannot be derogated from or detracted by a state legislation. These are principles that the Supreme Court has culled out over the years. So there is a historical backdrop which is certainly supported by the Constitution's mandate itself, as reflected in the structure of the Constitution. So to me, if United States represents a certain degree of federalism, Bharat's nature of federalism is much more union-centric. And if somebody has a problem with that because of the person who's at the helm or who's at the top, then I think it's a matter of ego and not a question of constitutionality.
I fully endorse this gentleman's views. I think Mr. Ravi is very much correct, and this shindy which is being thrown up by Tamil Nadu government is all, it's all political. It is not it is in the interest of Tamil Nadu students also. I am from the state of Tamil Nadu to sort of compete and then qualify themselves. Already we have diluted the system by having all this. Fine, that is that dilution is called for to bring about social equality in the form of reservations. But now to carry it forward that some state should be exempted from NEET is all bogus and we should not be acceded to. Mr. Ravi is well within his rights. Similarly, you will find this uniform pattern. It is only these non-BJP ruled states which is creating all these issues about governors and other things. And I fully endorse this gentleman's view that if ours is the constitution which clearly says that it is a federation of states with a unitary bias. So you need to concede that it is the government of India which is ultimately responsible.
Points taken. Let me come back to that in the next round as well about cooperative federalism and where we are with that and where we have to go with it as well. But before that, let me bring in Tushar Gupta into the picture. He's heard out both the panelists very patiently. Tushar, going back to a point that, both the panelists, in fact, touched upon about how this is nothing but a political gimmick. Is that what it is? Trying to win some political brownie points, a game of one-upmanship.
Absolutely. See, the constitutionality part has been highlighted pretty well by J. Sai Deepak, so I won't repeat that. The administrative part has been highlighted by the senior panelist, so I won't repeat that. Now you go into the politics of it. Let's go to Punjab. What happened a few weeks back? The Prime Minister was supposed to address an election rally. The local MLA or aspiring MLA quickly got a few villagers together to protest on the highway and block his cavalcade. It was purely a political move that we cannot let the Prime Minister address an election rally in a state where anyway he's bound to lose. The BJP is losing Punjab, even today, even that day, even tomorrow. So this is what happened. In Haryana, at the peak of the protests during Singhu, Ghazipur and Tikri, Chief Minister Manohar Lal Khattar wanted to attend a function in Karnal. He was stopped by the farmers who were backed by the opposition parties in the states. In West Bengal, all the discussion we've had with all this to and fro we've been seeing between the governor and the Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee is after the post-poll violence that happened in the state. The governor took stock of the situation. The governor wanted to hold the Chief Minister accountable. There was a proper report, a 50-page report that highlighted the heinous crimes that were committed against the voters of the BJP by the state machinery. That's been documented. That is when the governor came into the picture. So if all of this is not political, what is? KCR is not opposing the Prime Minister's intervention into the state's politics on the grounds of constitution or saying, oh, look, this is unconstitutional. By sending a junior most minister, which is again against the protocol, this is just a political play. And my worry is this will spill over to the other states which are not ruled by the BJP. And today we have BJP in the center, all good and well. Tomorrow, we might have Karnataka with the Congress government, Rajasthan with the BJP government, Himachal with the Congress government, Uttarakhand with the Congress government, Chhattisgarh with the BJP government. So why are we, for the temporary political battles, putting in danger the long-time established institutions of governance? J. Sai Deepak is particularly right that the
union of Rahul Gandhi made that point in the parliament the other day that, oh, we are a union of states. The center cannot take the decisions for the states and all that nonsense. Now, when the farm laws were passed, there was this whole narrative in Punjab that the center cannot decide for us. There was this actual narrative within the states that outsiders, the word was outsiders, Gujarati outsiders, Shah and Modi cannot decide for the farmers of Punjab. But this is unconstitutional. If the constitution is giving Prime Minister Narendra Modi's led government the right to formulate the laws for the entire country, where does this political narrative of Gujarati outsiders not interfering with the state government's agriculture policies come from? That is my worry, that because of temporary political battles, we are putting in danger the long-term established institutions of governance. That's my worry.
Absolutely. Talking about this particular aspect of governance, Mr. Lakshminarayanan, there is, Tushar Gupta's worry or concern is that it is going to spread to other states. But, looking at another aspect and connected to that, what about the people itself? Isn't the common man suffering as a result of this?
Certainly, sir, the common man, if this kind of behavior is depicted by the chief minister just for the sake of politics in some of the opposition ruled states, the common man will lose respect not only with the chief minister, he will lose respect with the prime minister, and then there is nothing left in this country. After all, there is only 3 institutions which are still running this country: is at the national level PM, at the state level CM, and at the district level district magistrate. Now, district magistrates have already been, their powers have been eroded because of so many interference, but so much of interference by the MLAs and MPs and so many things which is happening in the states. Now, the only institutions which have still not been fully eroded is the CM and PM. Now, this much, all CMs owe it to the country and the country's constitution that when he is the elected prime minister of this country, the due respect must be shown to him. It is not for the man, it is for the institution of the prime minister. And it's a shame for our country if we don't receive our prime minister when he visits the state. As this gentleman Tushar correctly summarized, this visit of the prime minister latest to Andhra was not a political visit. He was trying to inaugurate a statue of one of the greatest saints India has had. What is wrong in that? Mr. KCR could have come. There is nothing which is so wrong with his health. And the next day you will find that he would be attending some other functions to criticize the BJP. I think it is being carried too far. It shows that, I think time has come, though it will be again a draconian suggestion. The government should say that people who don't follow the protocol and try to insult the chief minister like this, those governments should be sacked. This is the only way. You should make an example of some government so that this fear of God sets in people. Now you have in Delhi also, every day, I don't want to name, this chief minister abusing this, that. If the, when the government is saying that we don't want these farmers to come and disrupt life here, you have the state government going and giving them water, going and giving them milk, going and giving them material. This is all totally ridiculous, what is happening now. And I think there must be a law that, okay, you show your opposition to the prime minister. That is always shown if there is an election. But you can't be sort of bringing down the ethical standards to such a base level like this, which is happening now.
Absolutely. All right. Points well taken. Deepak, going back to a point that we were making earlier about cooperative federalism, so where does it stand right now? And are we not clear really as far as the idea of cooperative federalism is concerned with regards to the states?
See, let us understand the fundamental reason why we have put this structure together. One, there is no amount of freedom that any particular dramatist person can claim which endangers the unitary nature of Bharat as a country in any manner, which is to say, its ability to function as a unit qua an external source must be preserved. And insofar its internal administration is concerned, it must be on constitutional lines. Now, let me tie into the points made by the previous panelists. The point is, do states or state governments have the option of resisting or registering the protest against any policy of the center? Yes, there are 2 ways of doing it. One, you make it an election issue and you see if you can win at the hustings, point number 1. 2, if you have a fantastic case constitutionally, well, the best forum to go is the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court's primary job is to resolve disputes between the state and the center. That was the precise reason why the Supreme Court was set up. Okay. Now, if you're not able to establish a case of unconstitutionality, and you also realize that you're not going to be able to dislodge this particular prime minister at the hustings as far as 2024 is concerned, at least going by what it is today, what you're trying to do is that you're cutting the very branch on which you're sitting by destroying the institutional fabric, along with that, the respect for all these institutions, because at the end of the day, if the top politician of the state does not represent the top politician of the country, what example are you setting? That's point number one. Point number two, now I can understand that there is beyond the constitution, there is a life and there is politics. All of us agree. Okay. Because it's not possible to completely stick to that, but you have to ask, where do you draw the line? On one hand, you have instances where the prime minister's life has been endangered. And on the other hand, he makes a courtesy visit to your state you do not visit. And on the other hand, you have an extreme example where a successful politician chooses to dish out vendetta after elections against the opposition. So much so that the state government had to constitute a constitution bench to look into that. And while the governor was trying to do what he was supposed to do when the constitutional machinery of the state is broken down, he was accused of political partisanship. Now, after the constitution bench of the Supreme Court also came out with a specific finding, or of the High Court came out with a specific finding, a detailed judgment, you go to the Supreme Court and then say that the High Court is compromised, the topmost court of that particular state is compromised, the governor is compromised, then what are we left with? Everybody is lying. In the process, what is it that we have seen? That a legislation in Punjab, which was meant to benefit farmers, had to be repealed. People who lost their lives and 80,000 people who had to flee to Assam have not got justice yet. That hasn't happened. And as far as Hyderabad itself is concerned, I'm sorry to say this is indeed surprising behavior on the part of Sri KCR for one good reason. During the lockdown in 2020 and 2021, when the Prime Minister had asked for certain symbolic acts of support for the medical community, and there were nasty posts on social media ridiculing the Prime Minister, insulting the Prime Minister, it was this very KCR who came out in public and said, you may have disagreements with someone, but do not forget that Sri Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister. I would actually want to replay his own statement to him and say, notwithstanding your political disagreements with him, what you have done reeks and smacks of double standards. Has he come there to indulge in an election rally? I mean, when there's not an election season? No, he has just come to inaugurate a statue in the name of equality. That's all he's done. What is it that he has done that has effectively harmed their interests? The problem is they end up letting their political insecurities get the better of their statesmanship. Today, the unfortunate part is statesmanship in this country is precious little. And I'm sorry to say that it is primarily found in the Prime Minister at this point, and very few people can match up to him on that particular subject. That is the fact. He has conducted himself with extreme dignity and silence in the face of vitriol and dirty attacks, including attacks on his life. That's a fact.
I totally agree, sir. I endorse what he says. Not only that, all these people were critical when he was talking about vaccination and double vaccination. And then today, India has done the best in controlling the epidemic. And people are just and again just criticizing for the sake of criticizing. And ultimately, the same politicians were the first to get their VIP doses. So what are we talking about? It is all, is just as all these gentlemen have said, it is opposing for the sake of opposing, because they feel that they can't match Modi either in statesmanship or in winning in any election.
Right.
It is because the people love him. That's the end of the matter. And if people love him, you can't change people's love by all these antics, which is only demeaning their own personalities and their own sort of ethical standards.
Absolutely. Yes, Tushar, go ahead.
Bharata, you say about cooperative federalism. It's a very important question. There are two parts to it. In cooperative federalism, one which is visible to the public, which we're discussing, the politics of it. The second is one which is not visible to the public. I'll come to the first one. In the last 2-3 years, the politics of this country from the opposition has taken a certain direction led by the Congress party. And it is a sad state of affairs. Let me stress on that. The direction is that under the government of Narendra Modi, the opposition has no control over the media, no control over the judiciary, no control over the institutions of governance, no control over the bureaucracy, no control over the election commission. So there has been this repeated attempt to discredit all these institutions which work in tandem with the government. so as to make a perception that Modi has overtaken all the institutions under the sun. That's the first thing. Rahul Gandhi repeatedly has been trying to discredit, not just in India, not just in his rallies, but outside India as well. Remember that interview he gave to a Harvard professor where he said that the West needs to come and help India because Narendra Modi government has eroded the power of all institutions. Now, this person on the floor of the parliament says China has a vision, the union of states. Now, these are the same people who go to Kashmir and say we'll get Article 370 back. These are the same people who go to Punjab and say, so what if the 3 farm laws are beneficial for the state? So what if the 3 farm laws, the very same farm laws, were put in place by our state government under the Congress back in 2002, 2003? We will reject them because it's by Narendra Modi. The same people then back the likes of KCR because they are insulting Narendra Modi. The same people then keep silence on the West Bengal violence that happened. Okay, this is the first thing. So the whole politics, that is the direction it is taking, is discredit Modi by discrediting all the institutions, so that tomorrow you can make a case where states are given more right because the center has no, because there's no belief in the center. That is the thing. Now, is that the case? No, absolutely not. Are there no Modi voters in Telangana? There are. Are there no Modi voters in Punjab? There are. Are there no Modi voters in Kashmir? There are. That's the first aspect of cooperative federalism. The second aspect, which the public doesn't get to see. Tell me about the financial health of the state of Punjab, of West Bengal. Today, these 2 states do not have enough money to pay their employees. West Bengal, in the last week, I think, has stopped a certain pension because they've run out of money. Today in Punjab, Kejriwal and Channi are both promising helicopter money if they come to power, even when they have no money to pay the salaries of the state government employees. So when tomorrow the states are in trouble, they'll reach out to the center for fiscal help. They'll reach out for the center for the debt management. Where is the cooperative federalism then? Then these states need it. Then these states need all the help. The second wave, the Delta wave, which happened, the government said, okay, we are leaving it to the states to procure the vaccines. All of these states, all of them, Kejriwal, Samajwadi Party, West Bengal government, KCR for that matter, Punjab, Haryana, all the non-BJP states put together a letter, surrender their responsibility to the Prime Minister, that boss, we cannot procure the vaccine, you have to do it on our behalf. This is also part of cooperative federalism. So where it's the question of responsibility, accountability, financial management, debt management, the states are very happy to come to the center that help us, and the center does it. The center does it as it must. But when it comes to the politics, the optics of it, the routine politics, then they want to have a advantage state. They want to put the center in a bad light. This is not how it works. Cooperative federalism is not that when the states want it, they get it, and when the center does what it has to do, block it. That's not how it works.
Points taken. Let me get quick closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward. Starting first with you, Mr. Lakshminarayanan.
Sir, I think what is best required is we should have an effective and strong opposition. All this is happening because Congress is almost decimated, and now there is a rat race among all chief ministers to be the national alternative, when none of them can be a national alternative. As of now, they are only regional leaders in their own states. So this is the whole, because of this rat race, they are now expressing all their frustration by insulting the institution of the Honorable Prime Minister, which nobody should dare to do. And I think in the name of cooperative federalism, we can't tolerate this kind of indiscipline for long. The government should make it very clear that beyond this limit, we will not tolerate. And then this, in the state of West Bengal, a chief secretary had the audacity not to call on the Prime Minister and not receive him. I mean, straight away he should be sacked. And the same is happening in Andhra Pradesh. What the hell is going on? I mean, not only the politician, they are also spoiling the discipline of the bureaucracy. And the bureaucrat should be told that if you can't receive the Prime Minister, we will not give you the pension. And we will not give you any of the perks. And even if the state government gives you a job, we'll throw you out. Then somewhere we have to put the discipline and the fear of God in all this. Otherwise, we are heading for chaos, more and more chaos.
Okay. Desai Deepak?
I think what is needed, as Mr. Lakshminarayanan points out, is an opposition which knows how to attack the Prime Minister with solid basis, as opposed to endangering the security of this country and its integrity. Because what it does is that it achieves the exact opposite, because people gravitate more towards Mr. Modi because he's seen as a strong person who can protect the country. So I don't think it really helps your case by collaborating with outsiders to attack this particular gentleman. If you really want to pick holes, I believe that a committed team and intelligent political advisors can come out with a list of, let's say, flaws and perhaps lack of delivery on the part of this government on critical areas. I think it's always possible with any government, and that is expected of the opposition. Unfortunately, the opposition, both in states as well as in the center, they have decided to adopt what I call the scorched earth policy, which is we will burn the ground completely so that not even a blade of grass is again cultivable in this part of the world. And if that is the policy, do not blame people for gravitating more and more towards Mr. Modi. You are pushing them towards Mr. Modi, including the fence sitters. So the opposition today is to be blamed entirely for creating more bhakts in their own language.
And Tushar Gupta, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
See, as much as I agree with my fellow co-panelists about the need of a strong opposition, I don't see a strong opposition emerging, at least in the next 2-3 years. We still have a fractured opposition. You look at how the TMC and the Congress and Samajwadi are going to fight for all the meat when it comes to the 24 elections. I agree with the comment Subramanian sir made early on in the show that we need to make an example out of a government. It should have been done with West Bengal. The post-poll violence that happened, the findings that came, the way the chief minister responded to it, the governor, the way he took stock of the situation. You remember the scenes where the people were pleading to the governor that save our lives. What else do you need? People were rushing to Assam. Himanta Biswa Sarma was there to receive those families. What else did the center need? The constitution gives the power to the center, to the president in particular, to dismiss such a government. And I agree with Subramanian sir wholeheartedly. An example has to be made, and an honest conversation needs to happen between the prime ministers and the CMs that, look, it's not the office of Narendra Modi, it's the office of the prime minister. It's not the office of Mamata Banerjee, it's office of the chief minister of West Bengal. There's a difference. These are not the thekedars. These are the individuals responsible for guarding the sanctity of that office, and that needs to be done. And I think, at the risk of sounding a bit paranoid, example needs to be made out of one state government. Else we'll have more instances where the chief ministers are blocked from visiting their own state. Agencies like CBI are blocked from operating, as we saw in Maharashtra. We don't want that. We don't want to destroy established long-term institutions for temporary political battles. I keep stressing on this.
Very, very well said, sir. I think our prime minister has been a great leader, but I think he's been a great gentleman, which is not called for in this country. He should be now very tough with some of these chaps who are really sort of insulting the institutions of this country and well-established institutions.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, what's coming out of this discussion is that it is unfortunate to see the center and some states behave in such a manner. It is good to have a difference of opinion. That's what makes a democracy work. But conflict should be handled with a level of civility. Honorable positions like that of the chief minister and governor should be respected and not taken for granted. The way cooperative federalism works in our country is very different from other nations. The constitution is framed in such a way that it gives more powers to the center, and that must be respected. As things are right now, it doesn't speak highly of our constitutional positions. Everyone has to show a level of maturity, and maybe it is time that an example is made of the erring party. Maybe it would help if the prime minister also called on all the chief ministers and conveyed his point of view so that we don't see such ugly scenes. At the end of the day, sanctity of all these honorable positions and institutions must be maintained. It is not the person that is important, but the position or the seat itself. With that, it's a wrap. But before I go, let me once again remind you to like the video, subscribe, and share the content, and do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive information. And how can I not tell you about the Bharata First Knowledge Center, our big success story? It is your one-stop destination for all your competitive exams needs. We have now 26 amazing courses all put together to help you in your competitive exams and also make you better Bharatiyas. Live classes for the second phase have already begun and they are currently going on. Do ensure that you register now and participate in the interactive sessions. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details. Hundreds are reaping the benefits of the Knowledge Center. Don't be left behind and don't regret later. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.